Welcome to Culture Gone Bad, a podcast hosted by Alexandra Saushkina
and Giuppy. Join us for a seductive spectacle of cruelties and paradoxes in current events, fashion tragedies, and cultural symbolism.
This show will leave you with lots of ideas, thoughts, contradictions, and self-reflection, which is so much needed in this cruel and mad world. Culture Gone Bad is back, and I'm back as well, fresh out of Paris.
You go to any show?
I did go to some showrooms. It was more. It was quite a brief visit, so I was very focused. And Giuppy, I think ignorance is a bliss. This is my biggest takeaway because I didn't know that Paris was not only invaded by a fashion week, but it was also invaded by bad bugs. And I had a traumatic past.
Yeah, I told you, right? I sent you.
You told me when I was about to head back. So, like, if you told me before, I think I didn't sleep because my biggest worry in Paris was being marked because it's really bad there. Like my friend, the day before I arrived, she had all her things stolen on the street.
Wow.
Like literally, they took her back and everything. And it happened twice to her in 2 weeks. So my main thing in Paris was don't get mugged. Don't get anything stolen. So I was walking around like a crazy woman. But if you told me about bad bugs, I think I might have needed your services of therapy after. Paris is a traumatic place. Anyway, so Fashion Week happened, and Giuppy, I think you and I, we addressed.
Fashion Week, Fashion Month.
Yeah, Fashion Month, fashion events. Yeah, it's all happened, and now we know, but there is nothing to look forward to.
Exactly. That was also my thought.
Well, you know what? Because if people don't know, I actually work. And as part of what I do lots of trend maps and I look at trends. And when I'm working on this next season, Spring Summer 24, at some point I realized what the only word I have is minimalism. Like there's some like form of extreme minimalism everywhere. And I'm trying to move like into different themes. And I didn't even know where to move because everything is very basic.
Look, as you know, maybe our listeners don't, but I also teach trends forecasting. So my idea is to do two things. Teach the students how to look at trends that are actually out there, so trend reporting, but also how to analyze the present to imagine the future, because the only certainty in fashion that we have is that the future will be different from the present. Fashion is about change. So looking at the present and imagining a different future, that's what trends forecasting really is in terms of fashion. And there is some predictability to it. Now, I have also I had the same thought. And is there any collection that exemplifies this to you? This extreme minimalism.
I mean, Jill Sander always does, but this is the ethos of a brand. But even if I look at let's pick a brand which is usually not about minimalism. Ludovic de Saint-Cernin. I think this brand is about sex and sexiness and body and eroticism, and we did have a bit of that, but it also was minimalism in this like essence. I almost feel like we're having a bit of a revival of, around circa 2009 Phoebe Philo minimalism, which when I was thinking, stepping back from fashion and just thinking about our world, it's quite chaotic and very uncertain, and we have so many crises. So it sort of makes sense what fashion is playing it very safe and offering people clothing, which is it's about as much as we maybe don't like to admit it, it's this timeless, even if it's a fake idea of timelessness, but it looks like a fashion which is less attached to a specific trend and more about the style or aesthetic. This is what it looks to me.
Yeah, so I do see this what you're saying, and I agree. It's mirroring the post 2008 recession.
Yes.
Now we are in a different recession, and usually one thing that we know is that one of the few predictable things in fashion, truly predictable things in fashion, is that after an economic recession, fashion becomes minimalistic. The problem is that in the post 2008, if you look at 2009, 10, 11, 12, everything became minimalistic. Even the king of maximalism, Galliano, was fired and replaced with an utterly minimalistic designer at Dior at the time. So you did see this everywhere at the time, this minimalistic, and that was also a good moment for Jill Sander because it's this very minimalistic house. I think the difference is that at the time, minimalism was very optimistic. So, for instance, you had very bright colors, you had very destructed shapes like Phoebe Philo, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the same now. It's almost like today's minimalism is not able to, today's choices by designers are not able to fill the gap, to fill the chasm between minimalism and frumpiness. Or carelessness. It's not minimalistic destructurations. It's not minimalistic optimism. It's not minimalistic functionality. Today is just minimalism in the sense that designers are scared of taking any direction. And because any direction could lead them to failure. And the world of fashion is very, very uncertain right now because people are not spending, even rich people. So I think they are very scared of moving in any direction and retreat into minimalism, which is simply the lack of decision. Is not real minimalism as the one we like, right? The destructurations that we like. And I think
I'm just thinking it's not necessary it's not what we don't like it or like it. I think this is a sort of minimalism which is I think we're trying to develop almost like uniforms. I don't know if it's a sense of minimalism which is trying to capture people as like, this is what our brand is for, and you should invest, and this is what you should stick to. But I maybe because I'm influenced, but what I experienced this summer, because I was looking at a lot of like Asian art and architecture. And I saw a lot of connections and parallels. I think because I'm thinking about brutalism a lot, and I think the clothes we see, um, it will look very well in minimalist interiors of brutalism. And this connection for me sounds like there's a practicality and there's the sense of we need to survive. And when fashion gets to survival, we have two ways. You go into this very dystopian sci-fi, almost like military influences. And another one, I mean, we also have obviously extreme escapism. And I think this one is more about um, trying to, maybe brands are trying to develop their own pieces in a style of their own. Like we're trying to like most of collections they almost look like they're raw in a way because it looks like they're proposing like a full everyday outfit. Like the thing about most of pieces I have seen on the runway, it is what you can wear every day, Monday to Sunday. Like they almost look uniform, and they are very non-occasion specific.
No, yes. And that's the next point I wanted to make. This idea of uniform that you mentioned is strengthened by the fact that if you look at what brands are doing, because they're so scared to innovate right now and to find new ways, they are relying on the codes of the house. So, for instance, Versace did a very, very 1990s Versace, right? Everything is falling back into the codes of the house. However, I think there is a difference between fashion minimalism and frumpy minimalism, as I was saying. And I think this season did not really quite bridge the gap for it. and to me, the example of this is the new Gucci, okay, which I don't know if it's new or old, but certainly useless because the every piece was very beautiful. Every piece was well constructed. I don't have any question about that. Clearly, Sabato De Sarno is somebody who knows how to make a coat or a blazer or even a skirt. What it lacked was character. There was this sense of everydayness, but that's not what I want Gucci to tell me. I don't want Gucci just to tell me what Uniqlo can tell me. You need to give a direction to minimalism that is not obvious. And unfortunately, he tried to only focus on the quality of the individual item, and he didn't really make people dream. And the brand had too many Pradaisms. Okay, it was Prada without the depth of Prada. It was Miu Miu without the preciosity of Miu Miu, and so it was a little bit weak. And that to me was even Saint Laurent. I loved the styling of Saint Laurent very, very, very much, but it was a variation of a single theme. Okay, the safari jacket by Yves Saint Laurent and a jumpsuit, beautifully styled, beautifully tailored, but it was lacking the I think the decision and the direction that we saw from Vaccarello in previous collections. Or Dior was extremely dull, very dull. So I think it's, the show at Dior was more in the background with those art pieces than in the actual clothes. Uh,
Dior
so
became less about clothes quite a while ago. Something is generally happening with the brand. You know, maybe we live in the times, like it's not only fashion, but generally like society-wide. I think we live in the times of mediocrity.
yeah,
We like average standards. You know, we like if you look at most of modern interior design, there's nothing exciting. Like, yes, you get like beautiful, aesthetic, modern pieces, but most of the time, everything looks like IKEA catalog. If you go to high street shops, everything looks the same, very average. I don't think we really have also people like even think about politics. We don't really have leaders to be inspired by.
yeah.
Think about pop music as well. I think everyone looks and sounds the same. I feel somehow we just live in a moment where everything is around the same, whereas like a very high average line, but outliers are very rare and something really good and great doesn't happen that much. And maybe fashion just is a reflection of that.
Yeah, I think it's because outliers are unpredictable. And today, as I was saying, we are dominated by fear, and especially in business, trying new ways. And outliers are unpredictable, whereas the mediocrity is pretty predictable. And you mentioned politics, which is exactly the same thing. Like if you look at America, the battle is between two jaded old men. One is Donald Trump, and the other one is Joe Biden. I mean, where are we going with that? It's not that different from Tom Ford's show. I was so eager to see the new direction of Tom Ford, and actually, it was 1996 all over again. Like it was the 1990s. There was no difference. I get that the designer that they appointed is worked with Tom Ford in the 90s, and those are his codes, etc., etc., etc. But can you really? It's almost like that there is a beautiful book called The Leopard by an Italian aristocrat who captures the changing landscape, political landscape in Italy after the unification. And the most beautiful phrase he says, this aristocrat who sees his world of aristocracy crumbling, he says, everything has to change in order for everything to be exactly as it was. And that's what we are seeing now. Everything seems to be changing, but in fact, everything is exactly as it was in 1996. So I think it's a bit of a trap, and I can't wait for fashion to be out of this
I don't know,
loophole.
Giuppy. I have a very maybe I don't know, not negative or not depressing overview of that, but um I think the reason why we on top of fear is because people are always scared of something. Like fear is a human instinct which never goes away. But I guess it's difficult to see the bright side, considering everything for the future. But nevertheless, something which we often see, if you go online, uh, online is ruled by algorithm.
Yeah.
And all the research, all the statistics, which you're the queen of statistics, so you know better than anyone else. Statistics show
I
us
wish.
what, well, they do show us that algorithm decides everything online.
Yeah.
So if you go on Instagram or TikTok, if you scroll for content, people talk about different things. You can find your beauty blogger, fashion blogger, travel blogger, or whatever content you like. But the way they present it, the style, the humor, even the way they dress, it all looks the same, regardless of who is their key audience and what are the messages. This highlights what algorithm today is actually the very guiding measure for the content we consume and what we expect as a society. Technology dominates our life. Like we cannot ignore it. Like it's everywhere. We are online constantly. My guess is that because internet and online social media has overpowered us so much, we now project this standard of algorithm into everyday life. And this could be the reason why everything looks so mediocre, because social media is very mediocre. As one of my friends told me, I feel when I go online, it's just like a pile of mediocre shit. That's all I see online. And this is not wrong. And
It's true. Even things that look non-minimalistic, that look maximalistic, and that look Instagram friendly, they are stupidly constructed. Very often, you take something that is very Instagram friendly, and the base of it is very banal, but is full of things attached on top of it, and therefore the structure is very banal. It's just embellished. So the excess made out of embellishment is really not an idea of innovation. It can appear new, but it's not very innovative. Also, I want to go back to the point that you made about the we are always scared. Of course we are. It's true. Human beings are scared, and there is a lot of reasons, as you said, to be scared. But I think that fashion in the past had the ability of sometimes of proposing a optimism, even to at least to fashionistas, not to society in general, but to fashionistas. Fashionistas would find an escape in fashion. It was the case in the 1990s with the hedonistic escapism, where no danger was perceived as long as you were fashionably dressed,
but what about
including
Marc
drugs.
Jacobs and grunge?
Yeah, I'm talking about after when the hedonism of that was 1993, but I'm talking about the hedonism of the late 90s. I'm saying that in some moments in history you do have the dystopian fashion, but then you also have the optimistic fashion. So fashion does have, in some moments, not always, in some moments, the power to actually uplift morale. Think about the New Look, Dior, and also the late 90s fashion, the 1980s fashion. Obviously, that was followed by Marc Jacobs and the dystopian grunge, of course. But then when Marc Jacobs went to Europe and he went to Louis Vuitton, he went back to that idea of somehow hedonistic, optimistic.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, Giuppy, but to have this hedonistic aspiration in fashion, our society is not in that point right now.
exactly, exactly.
We we all embrace the culture of victimhood. Everyone
Yeah,
thinks that they're marginalized, they're oppressed in one way or another. No one wants to work, no one wants to put any effort because everyone feels like someone or something is due to them, or they want to play a card because something didn't work out for them. And every single person in this world can find a reason to be a victim. I can be a victim because I'm a woman. you can be a victim because you're a gay man. And
Am I?
I don't know, Giuppy. I mean, last time I thought so.
Last time you checked, I was. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, we all can find reasons to find pity in our lives and not make any effort. And today, somehow, this has reached a peak where, like,
Yeah.
protests everywhere. People don't want to work. They just want to protest. They have some problem to raise. And this again goes back to generations. You look at our parents, they have been more resilient. Everyone just shut up and worked.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how hard it was and how little money they had. Today, people don't want to work for how much, doesn't matter how much you pay them. I noticed this trend over a decade ago when I remember often in fashion there's always like extra jobs available, like, some extra production jobs on the side. And it's not that we're paid well, but there's still money. And I always often would see people saying, you know what? I'd rather go and get drunk on Friday night rather than make extra £100. And that was just the beginning of this avalanche. And now everywhere you go, like, and you have some problem, like in any service or any shop or even like hospital, and you ask them, why is it taking so long? Why no one knows what's going on? The only answer we give you, oh, we are short staffed. Like, how comes we have so many people who don't have job and we are understaffed?
Yeah.
Something doesn't align here. And if this is the mood of our society, fine, but this is what we're going to expect. We're not going to have positive fashion because our society is obsessed with something else.
I usually keep a distance between what society is and what fashion is, because fashion is not the mirror of society. Fashion is the mirror of the most privileged segment of society. But I totally agree with you on that. And I think, in fact, the problem is that up until now, fashion has never been very permeable to politics. Fashion lived almost aside. That's what allowed fashion to be hedonistic. It could be inspired by politics in terms of style, but did not really quite embrace the battles. But now, with gender fluidity, with climate change, etc., fashion is embracing those things, and there is no way of seeing those things under an optimistic point of view. So I think this is irreversible. And I always think when this happens, I always think about the book that Gilles Lipovetsky wrote, The Empire of Fashion. In that book, Gilles Lipovetsky praises. It's a book of the 90s. So he really praises fashion precisely because fashion is not political. He says fashion allows you to live a happier life, not because it's a good social value, but precisely because it's not. Because if you focus on your neighbor, what religion is my neighbor, what political party does my neighbor vote, etc., 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 you get depressed and you get confrontational. Fashion, but if you focus on fashion, on consumerism, if you put your hopes onto something that is not your neighbor, society benefits from it, because you feel less for each other and you fight less and you kind of look at something, you dream essentially through fashion. So this idea of Gilles Lipovetsky is very brave, I think, but it always fascinated me very, very much for that
It's a
reason. And I
good
think
idea.
we totally lost that Gilles Lipovetsky idea. Yeah.
No, we did. Everyone is obsessed with political
Yeah.
views.
Yeah.
These days you go to any event and doesn't matter the nature of event, fashion event, art event, book event, at some point you reach the conversation about politics and you always find yourself asking, how did we get to this stupid once again, like all over? Like, yeah, our political party is weak, no one knows what it was doing, but then in that country it's even worse. And everyone has to have a conversation about that, and everyone has to take a side. I have a very interesting example. I have a friend who moved here from Russia recently to London, and she told me the biggest difference I've noticed, and she lived in Russia at different times, not only the current oppressive system. She told me here, big part of social integration in the West is to be able to hold a political conversation. And she said that's very unusual. So she finds like out of many things people discuss, you really have to be well versed and have a political stance to be able to socially integrate, which is a bit sad, I think, considering there's so many other things in life than politics. Well, well, well.
Well, yes, I also think that because especially the left, since the 60s and 70s, the feminists of the left have said that everything is political, even the personal is political, and this idea has been taken seriously. And as you say, it shouldn't be taken seriously. The problem is that everybody is compelled, as you say, to engage in political conversations. What you are not encouraged to do is to have opinions that differ from your crowd. So if you are in a conservative crowd, you're only allowed conservative opinions. And if you are in a liberal crowd, you're only allowed liberal opinions. So people may be talking a lot about politics, but they are not really debating. They are echoing each other's ideas. Once again, the algorithm rules even our private lives. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, 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 no. That's good. Well, speaking of private and political, um, I think we have a very big month in London. Well, it's October, so in London it's a month of art. Well, after
Please,
the
yeah.
month of fashion, September, we have a month of art. And Royal Academy opened a huge exhibition dedicated to a woman. Apparently, Giuppy, speaking of feminism, this is the first ever exhibition dedicated to a single woman artist
Oh,
at Royal
wow.
Academy. Well, yes, sexism runs supreme still. Well, anyway, so I'm talking about Marina Abramovic. If anyone hasn't figured out yet, she is currently in London and she's hosting lots of different events on top of exhibition. Did you go to see her exhibition at Royal Academy?
No, 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 not this one, no.
I'm trying to gather what's your sort of take on Marina Abramovic?
I think Marina Abramovic is one of the most important voices of her own generation. And I love the work that she did in the 60s and 70s. It was always about testing the limits of humanity in a way, and there was a lot of concept there, especially the things she did with Ulai. Do you remember in Naples when she standed naked in front of the doors, and she and Ulai standed naked in front of the doors, and the game was to see whether people entering the door would turn to her naked body or to his naked body, or the things that she did at the time. Fantastic. I think over the years she has become a bit of a parody of herself, and when I see the recent things, there is a lot of she looks for emotions, and to express emotions through that face, and it always looks a bit fake to me. What I don't see in the present Marina Abramovic is the concept. That's something that is fading for me. I don't buy some of the things that she does now. The last thing that I really loved that she did, that I think is an absolute masterpiece, is something that she did at Venice some years ago. Do you remember when she standed on top of a pile of bones and she skinned the bones from the flesh from the bones? That
Oh,
was
yeah,
fantastic, fantastic.
yeah, it was a biennale. Yeah, it was
A
dedicated to
biennale, yeah,
Yugoslavia war. It was
yeah, yeah.
about. It's a great thing about that performance, but in the end, after like reading like all this like serious introduction about bonds and oppressions of war, we put in some like sultry, vulgar Yugoslavian music, and she's starting like doing this like erotic dance, getting this red napkin out of her underwear. That was really good.
Yeah, also Seven Easy Pieces was good because it was a commentary before fashion on the idea that on past now the performances are meant to disappear. That's why they're performances. You play them now and then they disappear. They're not there tomorrow, unlike other forms of art. And she reenacted seven important performances, and that was her work. That was very good. But something else that I see is a little bit. Uh, I don't know, too much. some things. But this doesn't want to be a judgment on Marina Abramovic as an artist. I do agree that she's one of the most important voices, but I don't need to like everything she does to believe that she's good,
Well, I
right?
think we don't have to like anything really, right? I
Yeah,
think fashion,
of
art,
course.
culture is not about like, there are things I hate, I still acknowledge them. Um, Marina's retrospective at Royal Academy is great. I think it's one of the best exhibitions I've seen in London in a long time. And I usually don't like Royal Academy exhibitions. I usually don't like how they are curated. And for some reason, this institution, despite the great collection and great resources, never delivers to, I think, the
Mm.
potential.
Yeah,
But nevertheless, this is a great exhibition. Fascinating thing about Marina Abramovic, she started, like you rightly said, with exploring limitations of her body and both conscious and unconscious body. This is probably influenced by the fact that she grew up in Yugoslavia,
yeah,
Soviet society, which collapsed, which was torn apart by wars and conflict. It's a very difficult environment to grow up in. I can totally understand that. However, what I find incredibly fascinating is her career progressed. She started to travel the world and she spent a lot of time in Asia and India specifically. What I realized in her work, later work, she actually realized that instead of looking for violence in her performances, she can connect, how she calls it, more spiritual side. And what you can see in her later pieces, there are more natural organic materials, and she explores this side of how you can push your body limits or find some energy or spirit within this connections, which is probably very Eastern philosophy compared to the aggressive take she has had in the beginning of her career. That is why I find it so interesting. And obviously, the highlight of this retrospective, she has her method. So it's like her school. And she trains emerging artists to do performance art. And as part of this exhibition, some of the performance artists she trains, they recreate some of the most well-known performance pieces she has done in her career.
right.
And they have this Ule and her performance where the people stand in a doorway
Yeah,
and they're naked. And this is incredible piece because, first of all, I think it's on purpose. They have selected performers with very pronounced sex organs. So, like, the reason is if you decide you're gonna pass through them, you will have to decide. You're either gonna rub
yeah,
off someone's breast or you're gonna knock someone's dick. Like, there is no
yeah.
way around it.
That was the original idea. I think was in Naples the first time she did it, either in Naples or in Bologna, and in a gallery. No, I think it was Lea Rumma in Naples. Anyway, and the idea was to see who decides to rub on Marina, and she was very beautiful at the time. I mean, she still is. And who decides to rub on Ulay? And they noticed that most males would rub on Marina, right? So it was very predictable bisexual orientation. So I think it's not only exploring the limits of the body, but also exploring the limits of social interaction. There is another performance, I don't know if you remember that, where she was in the room and she with the people, and she had several objects on a table, and
Mm.
on this table, there was a rose, there was a gun, a loaded gun, there was a knife, there was several things. And everybody was invited to treat the body of the artist as belonging to them. And they could do anything to her. And they could, I don't know, caress her with a rose. And at some point, I think somebody was getting violent and she didn't react, she didn't do anything. I belong to the public, so they can actually, it was really testing the limits of what people would do if they are not given any rules. And at some point, I think the guy who was becoming violent got stopped by security, I don't know, but that was another great performance.
Yeah, Marina is very fascinating. And now she has published a book with co-author, and it's a visual biography. And I went to a presentation and a talk about this. And Well, my biggest takeaway, we need to separate artists from their art. Marina is a very Soviet woman, and she's very funny. I think probably at this point, and maybe in her age in her career, I guess she probably takes things a little bit lighter. But my guess would be if Marina wouldn't become an artist, she would become a stand-up comedian. She she is a big fan of cheap, accessible humor. Like she really likes to make these fun comments, even though her art is very profound. I find it a very interesting contrast. Anyway, I do think there is a big commercial element now in her work, and even with visual biography. I'm not sure she even knows everything which went into this book.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I was saying that I don't like. That there is a very, very, very blunt commercial side to most things that she's doing now, and I think it gets. That's why I don't buy all the spiritualism when she became so commercial. It's just contradictory. She's not Jeff Koons. If she was Jeff Koons, then okay, but you decide a different person. And I think this idea of humor that you mentioned correctly is very so is it's typical of Soviet minds. I am thinking about Slavoj Žižek, who writes his books with a lot of Stalinists and post-Stalinist jokes in it, and jokes are the main way through which he approaches philosophy, which is the reason why we love Žižek so much, probably. So
yeah.
post-Soviet
Yeah, it's
minds are
Soviet.
very, yeah.
Yeah, she told lots of very grotesque Soviet stories. And yeah, actually, I think she is really trying to target mass audience of mediocre people. Well, I'm sorry to say that, but even Marina Abramovic is cashing in on mediocrity these days. Well, um, well, what else can we say, Giuppy? You look really good in glasses.
Yeah, this is screen protection. Finally, I can wear the glasses I want, not the glasses I must, because I had laser eye surgery. So, and before that, I couldn't wear the glasses I liked. I had to wear those very ugly glasses with very thick lenses. So now finally I can choose things that I like. And also I wanted to be dressed like this with a very somber look today because I wanted to talk trash about current fashion. So I need to look the part, don't I?
Well, I mean, I didn't, right? I look pretty trash myself today.
No, you look as I normally look, and but you don't look as you normally look. You always have these outfits for the episode.
Well, yeah. Well, what can I say? Time will tell, and maybe we will move out of mediocrity at some point. I really hope so.
Or maybe one day we will look back and we will think that today was so amazing to live in today's times, right? And we will think that mediocrity is in the future. I don't know.
The irony of
I
life,
mean,
isn't it?
yeah.
Well, till next time.
Till next time. Bye. Regardless of how much you loved or hated this episode, now you absolutely must subscribe and leave us a comment and give us a like.
Because remember, love and hate are just one step away from each other. Until next time, culture gone bad says goodbye.